the door.
Police break into the apartment of Adam Trammell, a schizophrenic, after a neighbor reported he'd been having a breakdown and earlier had been wandering outside his front door naked.
Brandon, we just want to make sure you're okay.
When they find him, Adam is taking a shower. What happens next is caught on one of the police body cameras and is very distressing.
Brandon.
When Adam doesn't respond to the commands shouted at him and splashes water at the police, he's given an electric shock.
You're gonna get tased. I don't want to tase you again, Brandon. Relax, Brandon.
Over the next 10 minutes, Adam, not Brandon as they were shouting, gets more distressed, screams all the more desperately, but gets tased many, many more times. He's dragged out of his apartment and injected with a sedative, but moments later, Adam stops breathing and dies.
He's not breathing anymore. Okay.
Where is the imminent danger? There was none. And to know that he suffered like that for no reason at all. He didn't deserve it at all.
You done tased him 15 times. He's in a tub. There's no big threat like he was saying. Oh, no, we wait for backup. He's laying in a tub, dying.
But even after seeing the same footage we have, the district attorney ruled that, in his words, there was no basis to conclusively link Mr. Trammell's death to the actions taken by the police officers. Well, I'm sure we're all left with so many questions after seeing something as shocking as that. And a little later, we'll hear how the police involved justified their actions. But as extreme as that seemed, it is a staggering proportion of the people killed by police in America each year who have a mental illness like Adam, or a physical disability, or an intellectual one. 26-year-old Ethan Saylor, who had Down syndrome, idolized police officers. He'd even wanted to be one. One evening, he'd been at the cinema with a carer, but at the end of the film, he went back to his seat, wanting to see the movie again. Hearing someone was inside the next screening without a ticket, 3 off-duty police officers went in. Ethan's mother takes up the story from evidence given in an investigation.
At some point it becomes, you need to leave or you're going to be arrested. And Ethan still doesn't move. And so the officers put their arms under his arms to lift him up and to remove him from the theater. So somehow in those next seconds or minutes, Ethan ends up on the floor, face down, and is not breathing.
Ethan was restrained, handcuffed, and had been crying out before he died.
A week and a half to 2 weeks later, we were called to the sheriff's department. The autopsy report was back, and they told us that the medical examiner had ruled this a homicide and the death was caused by asphyxiation. And yeah, that was probably the most dramatic and traumatic moment in all of this, was realizing he had been killed.
Sadly, the department whose officers were involved in Ethan's death has not engaged with Patti. They agreed a financial settlement with her, but never so much as apologized or admitted any wrongdoing. They refused all our interview requests. Already this year, right across the US, at least 130 people with a range of disabilities are confirmed to have been killed by police officers. These are just the ones we know about. In hundreds more cases, it was never determined whether the person killed had a disability at all. But what of the officers who have taken the life of someone with a disability?
I was involved in this critical event where I had a subject who was armed with a knife outside of school, and I was forced into a situation where I didn't have any other choice but to shoot and kill the individual. After the incident was over, I was able to be told that she had a history of mental illness. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't understand what was going on at the time. The reality is that no one wants to be involved in that moment where they have to point a weapon at another individual and pull the trigger.
Then why does it happen so often, with so many people with disabilities killed by the police? Well, all police here are, of course, armed, and they face members of the public who are too, often.
Show me your hand! Hey!
The complaint from many around the country is that officers too often command and control, shouting orders, then physically taking charge, especially when someone doesn't immediately comply, and that can include the use of lethal force. The problem is some people, as we've seen, just can't comply.
There's times when, you couldn't touch Adam. He got really withdrawn, or he'd get up excited. I would listen to him, I'd bag off of him, and I would say, well, okay, think about it. He had that understanding. It's just that if I went in there and just used my authority as a father, I'm your father, this, it just didn't work.
After weeks of trying, we finally managed to speak, on the phone at least, to the district attorney who ruled Adam did not die as a result of the actions of the officers who tased him numerous times.
They're not doing this because they wanted to harm Adam. It's the exact opposite, right?
But it doesn't look like that, does it?
But it does, though. Their expressed intent any number of times is that they were there to help him, that they wanted to get him out of that
they kept saying
situation.
That as they tased him.
Right, because they had to get him under control so that they could get him to some medical attention.
You're saying that it was not unreasonable that they tased him?
That's correct. Not based on their training.
This ain't a big deal.
But more and more, because of a mental health system widely thought to be failing, police are being forced into encounters that trained medical professionals should be handling.
Put your hands behind your back. I'm sorry.
And so many people go untreated because of a lack of access to health care.
If I guarantee I'll smoke you. I guarantee it.
But if there is no option and police are to be the first to be called, how can things improve so no one gets harmed?
1 out of 122 will respond out there with Adam 70.
Sergeant Nuna has had a considerable amount of training since the incident where he felt he was forced to kill a schizophrenic woman. But he still feels, as painful as it's all been, his fundamental police instincts would still kick in if the same thing happened again.
I have to make sure I go home to my family at night. And so whether the person is mentally ill or not, they have a knife and they're pointing it at me and they're walking toward me and I'm telling them to drop the knife. Drop the knife. Stop. Just stop. My priority has to be my safety.
But that still sounds like people who can't comply for whatever reason,
Right.
could still get harmed almost before police can compute that there's a problem there, a mental health issue.
Absolutely, they can.
There are few hopes of the major shift in police culture which many feel could save the lives of people with disabilities, where de-escalating situations really is the focus. With even fewer expectations that mental health provision will radically improve here, the grim numbers will continue to grow across this country.